Okay, folks, hello. Welcome to this very short lecture on HTML, the Hypertext Markup Language. So let's begin and enjoy. Yeah, so HTML stands for the Hypertext Markup Language. It is the language that we use to structure web pages and the contents of web pages. So the purpose of HTML is to give structure to otherwise unstructured text and other materials. Now, when you look at HTML, and many of you have probably already seen HTML, you can always view the HTML of a web page that you're looking at by right-clicking on a page and clicking View Source in a desktop browser. And if we look here at this example of a little tiny bit of HTML, we can see, just by looking at it, we can begin to see some structure that is illuminated for us a little bit by the syntax highlighting of the editor. And I've tried to indicate it a little bit here with some colors. An HTML page is made up of elements which are delimited by tags. So we call these, the word element is a technical term. It doesn't mean just part. An element is an entity which is delimited by tags and has this structure. There is a tag identifier, a set of attributes, content, and a closing tag. So if we look here, we see you can see I've outlined a kind of generic tag, which begins with an open square angle bracket. We have the name of the tag, a set of attributes, maybe attribute 1, attribute 2, attribute 3, but usually they have names like class, href, source. And then we have a closing tag. Oops, this is missing here. The closing tag is identified by the / before the name of the tag. And in between the opening and closing tags is the content of the tag. So what we have up here is a bunch of kind of dumb HTML and pseudo HTML, and over on the other side is that same code rendered in the web page itself. So and here we have a little tiny example of HTML. So here is a rendered HTML, and here's the code itself. And we can see what's happening here is that the markup, these annotations as it were around the text, is providing instructions for the display of the text to the browser. And those instructions have very significant effects on how we view the text that's inside them, right? Here we have just a couple of tags here. We'll talk about the particular tags a little bit more later. Oops. So the thing about having text put into this kind of format is that it has many consequences which may not be apparent at first. On the one hand, it structures how you see the text. On the other hand, it allows computers and programs, software running on computers, to scan and interpret the text and potentially to treat it as data which can be combined and analyzed and put to work in other ways. That is fabulous, and it also has very significant social consequences, as we've discussed. For us in this class, the point of learning HTML is twofold. It is first so that we can understand how to make a web page look like we want it to look, and second, so we can understand also how an algorithm run by a computer, maybe by a scholar or maybe by a giant megacorp, might treat that text as data. All right, so in this class, our introduction to HTML is going to be very fleeting. HTML is certainly the easiest topic that we're going to be grappling with in the next few weeks, but it also has its own complexities that go far beyond what we will discuss here. So the point here is not that you will come out of this like really knowing everything there is to know about HTML. Instead, you'll have some basic ideas of what HTML is, and you'll know what the kind of fundamental tags are that are used all the time, and you'll also know how to learn more if you need to. So I'm just going to list here a small number, or might feel like a lot to you, but it's actually a small number of tags that you really have to know before you can use HTML effectively. And I'm going to divide them into two categories. The first category are the tags that help to give structure to a web page. We call these block level elements because they take up their own space. So the one that's really crucial is HTML. Every HTML page begins and ends with HTML tags, except for the little doc type declaration at the very beginning. So yeah, HTML opens and closes every page. And then inside HTML, there are always exactly two direct children, two tags that are inside HTML and not inside any other tags. They are the head and body tags. So the head exists mostly for metadata and for providing links to other more complicated things. And body contains everything that you're going to see in the web page. Inside body, there are other structural tags that are really important. The main one for the longest time was div, just means division, made a division of the page. Often the div was invisible. There's no, by default, doesn't sort of do anything strange. And then there, about 5 or 10 years ago, a new set of tags was introduced, sometimes called semantic tags, which act a lot like div by default, but which mean something to you when you put them in. And so we try to use section, article, header, and footer instead of div whenever we can in our page, just to give meaning to those kind of potentially otherwise empty sections. And then inside these, we'll find P for paragraph, the basic paragraph unit, block quote to distinguish quotations, table and the parts of tables, TR for table row, TH for table head, TD for table cell, T-body for table body. We will use these in our assignment, but you should only ever use tables for display of actual tabular data. They were widely misused in the early days of the web and really created enormous headaches for us in the old days. Now they're mostly our friends. So those are our block level elements, and then the kind of other category are so-called inline elements, which are found inside those structural elements and usually flow along with them. They don't get their own box. We'll learn about that when we learn about CSS. So this is the most important tag in a way in HTML. It's the hyperlink tag that makes HTML what it is. It's the thing that allows us to link from one document to another. It's what gave HTML its revolutionary potential in the 1990s. And an A tag, this is the first one we're seeing here with an attribute. The A tag doesn't do anything unless it has an href attribute, which is the reference to which it points. And then similar to an A tag is the image tag. Instead of an href attribute, it has a source attribute. And instead of sending you to the image file, it actually embeds, as you know, the image into the page. I've also displayed here the essential alt text, which is the text that you will need to display for non-visual browsers. And then the thing to notice perhaps about the image tag is that it is self-closing. It doesn't have any content, and instead the opening tag and the closing tag have been smushed together. And that makes sense if you think about it, because the content is actually the source. So it has nothing inside it. And then emphasis, strong, italics, and bold are tags for marking up the display of text, emphasize and strong text. We try to use the EM and the strong text that's preferred, although you'll sometimes find the reverting to I and B because they're so easy to type. These are super important lists, ordered and unordered lists. The unordered lists are bullet points usually, and ordered lists are usually 1, 2, 3, 4, ABC, or Roman numerals or whatever. Okay, yeah, so those are our tags. Sorry, I just went too far ahead. All right. So what you need to do, you have to understand this as your goal. You have to learn to recognize this generic tag structure of angle brackets surrounding a name and attributes, content, closing tag. You have to learn how to work with some of the most common tags, and you have to learn how to learn more. That's going to be just super crucial, that last bit. That was pretty short. However, what I want you to do right now is take a break from these videos and sit down and work a little bit with HTML. There's various ways to do that, to do some kind of live HTML coding. I've linked here to the Mozilla Developer Network Introduction to HTML. The active learning modules are a great place to start, but I've sent you a link to this HTML practice repo that I made, and I would encourage you to do that, if you can at all, because that'll give you the sense of what it's like to work with HTML in the editor environment. So what I want you to do is click on the link, download the repo. You can either fork it or just merely clone my own copy, and start working with it in VS Code using the live preview to check out your work. Okay, so take a break, and I'll see you in a few minutes with some CSS.